Welcome to the High Fae Housewives podcast. I'm Blakely.
And I'm Kylie.
We are currently working towards our Masters in the Maasverse. Our current course is focused on Crescent City, House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah Janet Maas, and today we're chatting chapters 17 through 24.
Warning, while we may be your silly gal pals, we don't recommend listening to this podcast around little ears or ears that may be offended because we say bad words and shitty things. Now relax those shoulders, unclench those jaws, clench that clam, and let's get into it.
Chapter 17. Ethan was quaking in his boots with the fur for his fight with Ari the Drag, but the Vipe lets him know, nay, she no worky for me no more. You're fighting Sigrid. Duh. I just want you to know, I wasn't high, I wasn't drunk, but like me writing quaking in his boots and then I'm like, with the fur because he's a wolf, like I laughed at a joke that's not funny. That was my own for too long. I'm like,
But then you wrote, she no worky for me no more, and I'm picturing David Spade, so it was just like, The juxtaposition was intense.
I like to keep everyone on their toes, always.
Talking about when Therian returned to the suite, he'd returned to the suite an hour ago, but he'd gone into his bedroom and shut the door. We know Therian is not a 1 minute man. He's in there for an hour.
For sure. Yeah, I don't feel like he's quick off the mark like Cass. Like, he takes his time.
I just want to bring to attention for no reason.
Cool.
You posted a poll yesterday about Cassian versus Hunt, and I am really shocked that not more people picked Hunt because Kylie Fua, picked Hunt. I picked Hunt. I know you for sure did.
Blakely Olsen also picked Hunt on my personal, and then we got shamed by a girl, Katie, because she was like, who would pick Hunt when we know it's canon that he wears Crocs? And I was like, that's fair. So shout out to Katie.
You know, at least they're comfortable when they're standing behind, you know?
Ergonomics are important, you know?
Ergonomics matter. Like, I want to make sure that their back's okay when they're hitting it from behind.
I mean, think about it. They have wings. They have so many knots in those upper shoulder muscles already. Like, we want them comfortable in their Crocs while they're banging us from behind. Exactly.
Dr. Schultz and got nothing out in Crocs. So the Viper Queen was in a metallic gold jumpsuit and matching high tops. She was in matching high tops. And I know it says jumpsuit, but I literally only picture the Vipe in tracksuits, like Adidas tracksuits only.
I read it as a tracksuit, so this is a lie. It was not a jumpsuit. No.
Metallic jumpsuit? Nay. Metallic Adidas suit? Like 90s.
Do you feel like she's from the Bronx? Because I do.
She gives a little Jenny from the block.
Yeah. So I feel like she's got Bronx attitude.
Yeah, I would say so. She takes no shit.
Or takes kind of reminds me of the Marge from Real Housewives of New Jersey. A little bit. I could see that as well.
No pigtails though.
No, not a powerhouse in pigtails. No. So Bestril was locked into the prison, which Bryce describes as an ancient darkness. Nesta starts to fill her in on the prison lore, a misty island of the coast of their land, but Nesta is a questions gal, just like us. And it's like, hey, do you think we walked underneath the ocean? Az tells her, no way, Jose. That big-ass door must have been a portal that brought us here, because apparently there are caves and doors throughout the land that open to distant places. So let's talk about first the Misty Isle off the coast. What does it sound like, Kai?
Summerland?
Sure, yes, or Velen, but yeah, maybe they just really like to go in the...
I went dark first.
Yes. But what I actually really want to talk about is Prythian having portals. Caves and doors that open to distant places. We're introduced to at least one in the first ACOTAR book. If you look at the map from where the spring court is and where Under the Mountain is and the amount of time that Feyre walked, it doesn't make sense. So it has to be a portal of some sort. Now, the other potential portal that we all obsess over is that pool of starlight. Now, when they swam in it, nobody went anywhere, but it was just weird and it's randomly there. And let's just hypothesize that this is a portal. So that's 2 portals in the spring court. Why? Now we know Tam's family was tight with Hybern. Do we think Hybern had ties with the Daglin, or is Daglin? I mean, he was old as fuck. He was into spells. He has black eyes. He is, in fact, nameless. Was that his price, like Dorian's dad? Maybe Cochet actually has him in a thrall? I mean, I digress, but I feel like the Daglin created these portals because they would be the only ones that have like this power capability to do so.
I didn't even think about the fact that the King of Hybern, well, like, I did think about the fact that he could be Daglin. But does he know Silene? Silene?
Specifically Silene, you know?
Like, it's spelled S-I and it fucks me up. I just want to like read it Silene. And I did the whole first time.
I know you did. And I just skilled Silene. Maybe. Like, yeah, how old is the King of Hybern? We know he's real old, so
we don't know his government name. I haven't seen a picture of his ID. Like,
maybe Silene knows.
Maybe that's her actual government name. That's her Asteri name, and Silene is her Daglin name.
Wait, what did he used to say? Signet. Say it.
Signet.
But how would you say it?
Signet.
There we go. It feels like it was 2 T's and an E at the end. Signet.
It was fancy. It was French.
You're a fancy gal. They continued walking in the dark-ass prison, and then Bryce could feel some real powerful wards, and she remembered about the Archesian amulet that she had on her that allowed her to walk through Jespa's wards. So she pulled a little sneakeroo and went in without the rest of her best friends. She looked at the floor and saw whorls and carvings, and she realized, shit, these are Midgard's constellations. She started naming them all off, and then came upon... Okay, I hate that I'm like, oh, a zodiac girly, just like us. That got us in my head. She came upon Lakos and Thur, which, yes, is giving Loki and Thor, and Midgard was in between the two. Price couldn't help but think that whoever made this went through an awful bit of trouble, and they had been to Midgard and then came back. She had questions for Nesta, wondering about the harp and if it was special. After Nesta told her it was made and it could stop time, her mind immediately went to the Asteri as the creators of these things and them wanting them back. She tells them that she thinks whoever did all the carvings did so someone like her could learn the truth. So she stepped onto the star. A little dramatic there.
There's so many moments where I want to say dun dun dun.
Oh.
Every book we read, every single one, because we got a flair for the drama.
Love the drama.
You're so dramatic.
So, I've heard that before. Drama club president, hello. Embarrassing. Now, Az really perked up when she said, arrest us. And he's like, the warrior? And Nesta was like, wonder if the name came from the same source. Now, I searched the entire ACOTAR series, and he was not named. And negative ghostwriter on the rest of the Maasverse. So let's get into the etymology of it in Greek. It means to stand on a mountain. Now, in Greek mythology, he was the son of Agamemnon. He was the son of Agamemnon. In one mythology, he killed his madre because she killed his father. And then he is pursued by Erinys, which may sound familiar to you if you've been around. Erinys means fury, and we often tie her with Fury Axtar, leading Orestes into a cycle of revenge and justice. The story of Orestes touches on the themes of duty, morality, and divine. Now, I have no idea what his significance is in ACOTAR world other than Az and Nesta both know about him, which makes me think he's probably Illyrian just due to the fact that Nesta is new Fae, so she wouldn't know a ton of the history, but she was studying to be an Illyrian warrior, so it makes sense. And then to add it in, meaning stand on a mountain, it's giving Ramiel to me.
I'm sorry, we talked about Ramiel being Cathona's tits earlier, and so that's all I could think about.
It's okay, because when I said his duty, I was like, dude, you said duty in my head, and I'm still having to like pretend that didn't happen.
I can't think of Ramiel without thinking of boobs now.
Well, if you think about it, they had the necklace that she wears is 2 peaks.
That's why I think about it.
No, I know that. So I'm like, Ramiel, and then would it be, yeah, but the sun in between, motorboating? It's just a question.
Motorin.
Do you think of Superstar, or what do you think? Okay, cool.
Superstar.
Okay, just making sure that that's also what you think of.
Chapter 18. Hunt had the black lung, and it was kind of gross. Everyone was looking worse than if they were rode hard and put away wet. Since Pollux let them be for a minute, they were trying to reach a poker from a rack of weapons, but it was just a little too far. That's when Rune had a wild idea for Hunt to chew off his hand so he could reach the weapon. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Hunt was willing to do it, but Baxian took one for the team. Baxi Boy got to work on taking a bite out of Rune's wrist, but reminded him to shh and let it happen. This is the wildest desperate move. I cannot help but just picture him with a doll hand in place of his old one, like when Deadpool regrows apart.
Well, then it's like the millennial in me immediately was like, maybe this is the real Coyote Ugly origin story. It's between Baxian and Rune. But I don't like missing digits, let alone Rune having a fucking nub. And, and I don't like it. But I just want to mention that this just proves how fucking stupid men are, because he, rather than communicate, is like, that's a step too far. Bite my fucking hand off? Like, what?
While all this is happening, Lydia finds out that the harpy is getting fixed. Not great, since she's the one that took her the fuck out and will expose her for her Hannah Montana life. Back to Prythian, Bryce is on top of the 8-pointed star when light flared out from her chest, merging and blending with a hologram of a dark-haired High Fae gal known as Silene from the carving. They are wondering who this broad is when Azrael says she looks like Rhysand's sister, and then Silene starts monologuing. Azrael said softly, voice tinged with pain, she looks like Rhysand's sister, which begs the question, how does Rhys fit into this? Who's his daddy?
Yeah, the question is, who is Rhys's daddy? Now I have Toby Keith stuck in my head. So you're a bitch.
That was one of the last restaurants I went to, Toby Keith's I Love This Bar, before I tore my ACL.
Oh, he has one in other places? I guess I had only gone to the Toby Keith I Love This Bar in Vegas before it shut down.
Oh, nay, there is definitely one in Oklahoma. And
Nice.
I have been to it multiple times in my life on different occasions. I don't live there.
And you're just like, God, I gotta go back to Toby Keith.
Once was with my birth mom and once was with my dad. Totally separate, like decades apart.
They have good taste, I guess. Sorry.
I got butt rub, you know? Seasoning.
Mm-hmm.
This didn't help.
None of this is good. You're saying I got butt rub, I got seasoning, and just knowing that you went with your parents. Also, not good. So let's talk about the mythology of Silene. Before we get into Maasverse Silene, to see if there's any clues. Now, Selene's mother in mythology was Thea, and her father was Hyperion the Titan. She was sister to Helios the sun god and Eos the personification of dawn. Now, Selene's father, Hyperion, is said to be the first to know about the sun, the moon, the earth, and stars due to diligent observation, and because technically he was their father. Now, this is in fact interesting because we know Reese Boy is very much interested in. Wait. We know that Reese Boy is very much interested in this with his little orrery that he built himself. Now, Silene was the god of the moon. We do have Luna in Crescent City world, and then of course we have Deanna with her moonfire and Tog. Since the gods are said to be forgotten in Prythian, it makes you wonder, is this their version of the story? They just don't remember, is Silene, Luna, Deanna a god? And if Silene looks like Reese's sister, it makes you wonder, does that make him a demigod? And with my theory of Reese having that dog in him, because of how when he stops dampening his power, he's very cold, it would make sense that his family comes from the void. Don't get me started on his mother, because I'm very suspicious of her.
What if his dad's actually like a Titan, like part Titan? And then,
Oh.
Titans are brought into the mix. And that's why he's so powerful. Well, Titans are the parents and predecessors of the gods. The Olympian gods prove stronger in the whatever through strategy, alliances, and leadership under Zeus. So it seems like this is just, the Titans are actually more powerful.
Does make you wonder. Well, and then just like with Silene, meaning moon, and then the other dog's name's Helena, so that's close to Helios, which is light. Then what about Eos, that secret baby love child that I'm wondering about?
Selene's mother in mythology was Thea, and the father Hyperion. And just, I wonder, and if he's the first one that's observed all these celestial things. And then we have Bryce with Starlight. It's just, do Titans come into play in some form? Not necessarily like in SJM's, world. Selene's story comes from before she was born. Memories that her mom and dad showed her. Some mist appeared and the story played out while Silene narrated. They were slaves to the Daglan 5,000 years ago, the High Fae doing the kneeling. The Daglan were dicks. They were cruel, powerful, and cunning. Rebellions were squashed before they began. The image of a field of corpses and a gray sky, the twin to the one carved miles behind the tunnels, crucifixes, beasts, and blood eagles. She goes on. The Daglan ruled us, so we ruled the humans along with the lands the Daglan allowed them to govern. An illusion of power. They knew who their true masters were since they had to make a tithe once a year to them in the form of a kernel of power to fuel the Daglan's power and limit their own. I say that I've never lived in Oklahoma, but you can't fucking tell. Sarah J. Maas.
Mia.
Now they have the image of a Fae female kneeling at the foot of a throne, a seed of light in her upheld hands. Smooth, delicate fingers closed around the Fae female's droplet of power. It flickered and illuminated pale white skin and black eyes. She knew those otherworldly eyes while in golden robes, a crown of stars upon her head, and watched her absorb the power. Back to the monologue. The Daglan became arrogant, confident in their roles as HBACs, but then a force gathered. The vision of Thea appears, golden hair standing a step behind the Asteri's throne and resting bitch face. Bryce knew she was sent to see that bitch's face. I want to talk about crowns across the Maasverse. So in Throne of Glass, we have the Croc and Queen crown. Old Bobby Yellowlegs stole it from Rhiannon. When Manon put it on, was described as a living, glowing thing that glittered in her hand, as if 9 stars had been plucked from the heavens and set to shine along the simple silver band. The crown's light danced over Manon's face as she lifted it above her head and set it upon her unbound white hair. Even the mountain wind stopped, yet a phantom breeze shifted the strands of Manon's hair as the crown glowed bright, the white stars shining with cores of cobalt and ruby and amethyst. Manon was glowing as if the stars atop her head pulsed through her body, a wondrous and mighty beauty like no other in the world, like no one had ever been or would be again. It seemed to be made of light itself, Dorian said. And then we have the crown of Terrasin, which was refashioned by a master goldsmith from the remaining gold they stole from the barrow in Wendelin. It had twinning bands like woven antlers rose to uphold the gem in its center. It had a cut bit of crystal that contained the soul bloom of the king's flame during Orlan's reign. Even amid the shining metals of the crown, the red and orange blossom glowed like a ruby, dazzling the light of the morning sun. And then we have the crown of Mab, which was silver and pearl and diamond fashioned into an upswept swan wings. It sparkled like moonlight. And then we cannot forget Elena's crown of stars, which had no further description. But in ACOTAR, there was a crown of ruby and jasper in the weaver's cottage. And then Bryce has a crown of stars, but it's pretty vague on its description as well. And then we have Feyre from the crown room with glowworms. We'll get back to glowworms later. Her crown was crafted of silver and diamond, all fashioned into swirls of stars and various phases of the moon. Its arcing apex held aloft a crescent moon of solid diamond flanked by 2 exploding stars. And then Feyre had a tiara, glinting black stone, slender spikes jutting upward into a dark corona. Each spike was topped with a tiny sapphire, as if the spikes were so sharp they'd pierced the sky and drawn cobalt blood. And then that's a weird reference because of blue blood witches. So is it a witch's crown originally? She wore a tiara of gold flecked with lapis lazuli before meeting the queens. And Feyre also wore a black tiara accented with flecks of diamond that made it glisten like the night sky. And Moore had a crescent-shaped tiara. Feyre said her friend looked every part the imperious ruler. Once again, very suspicious of Moore. And then in Crescent City, the Autumn King had an onyx crown upon his red hair, the ancient stone like a piece of night, even in the light of morning. Luna had a silver tiara of a full moon held by 2 crescent ones gracing her upswept curling hair. And Bryce wore a tiara with a little peak of solid diamond glittering as if lit by starlight, an heirloom of the Dannon house. I mentioned a black tiara that Feyre wore. It was accented with flecks of diamond that made it glisten like the night sky. Are these one and the same? We will talk more about Thea's crown later, though, but I wanted to point out, these all seem to overlap within the story.
Chapter 19. Lydia really is hating her life right now. Not only is her mate being a baby back bitch, but he's stuck in a dungeon. Ophion is falling apart. The fucking harpy is about to be resurrected, and now Pollux isn't even deterred by her blood and still wants to bang it out. Poor gal. Bestrel is getting a history lesson. Thea was a sneaky sneak and learned all she could while being a slave to the Daglin, especially the Dread Trope. The Dread Trope mostly went unused and was the Daglin's downfall because they didn't like to share, so nobody got to play with the fun, deadly toys. Thea stole them from black pedestals that were held under the mountains using cave archways to move swiftly across the lands. Now she was shown another vision of Thea on Romeo with a black monolith behind the embracing Fionn, who was her secret lover. Az tells her that Fionn was the first and last High King of Prythian. Silene goes on with story time, telling him that Thea and Fionn knew what they needed to do to defeat the Daglin, the Cauldron. Silene tells them that the Cauldron was of this world, but the Daglin defiled it with dark magic. And yes, you probably thought of Harry Potter when I said that. But they did defile it by taking what it was and making it deadlier. No longer a tool of creation, but of destruction, and it produced some serious shit. One of those things was the Star Sword. Now it says 2 other figures stood there, veiled in the thick snow, but Bryce hardly had a chance to wonder about them before Selene's narration. Who are these figures? I, educated guess, am going with Orestes and Annelius, but I am unsure. Did anything pop in your head when you read that?
No.
Perfect.
I can't lie.
No. Okay. Silene goes on that they fought the Daglin and they won by using their weapons. Selene's father, Fionn, became the High King and Thea was his queen, but she claimed the island for herself. And her heirs would be the only ones worthy of tending to the island. After the Daglin left, they had no longer had to do the tithe. Everyone's power strengthened, and they turned into what they had been a millennia before the Daglin. Creatures whose magic was very tied to the land. The island's power was dusk, twilight. The land was regenerating, and Thea was procreating. 2 daughters in 5 years. Theon had started to fade because he was an older gent, but he didn't find Thea to be a worthy successor, and that Helena should lead. Thea did not like this, and neither did her general Peleus, so they did a little coup d'etat. Murdered Theon by a bog with assist from some knock-looking motherfucker. Why I said that. The land didn't seem to like this, though, and petals began falling from the trees. Then the Star Sword and Truth Teller came out of the water by some scaled thing, and Thea grabbed them. She helped make them, after all, so they answered the call to her blood. Thea kind of sucked, but she was a powerful son of a gun with the dread trove and the blades. She tried teaching her gals about the world and how evil still lurked beneath them. Even with that power, it was never enough. She remembered that the Daglin talked about other planets, and she wanted both of her daughters to be able to rule, even though they seemed to have no interests. She knew that she could use the horn and the harp to open a door, but her court didn't seem interested. But there were some faith throughout the lands, including fire wielders from the south, merchants, and Peleus told her where to cast her attention from the notated star maps from their former masters. But Peleus was a bad seed and was plotting. A Daglin who had been using armies of mystics to look for their world answered and promised him a reward. Thea didn't even question Peleus, so some of the Fae went to the isle, opened the door, and Rige was waiting. There were other Fae from a different world there too. Thea was a little suspicious, though, and hid the harp and horn. But Peleus had already routed her out, and the only reason she was alive is so they could try to get access to them. So Peleus means dark blue or muddy, and in mythology was the son of Poseidon. He was the king that sent Jason for the golden fleece, and he was known for being cunning and deceitful. So I guess that the boot fits. And we talked in the last episode about Rhys knowing a lot more than he let on, and I really believe that to be true. He has such a resistance to wanting to be a high king or have more power because he knows what his ancestors did. It's almost like the Aragorn trope where he's in fact denying his birthright because of what his ancestors did. That's what it reminds me of.
They're both hotties, too.
Yeah, totally hotties. Cue the Star Wars guy saying, "It's a trap." The beautiful land of green and light and beauty was great, minus the fact that the Daglin already lured others who would fight for that land. But the land was already populated by humans. Humans and a few silly creatures that kept to themselves lived there. Humans were not impressed with all the newcomers, but Thea knew what to do. Kill them or enslave them. When I said kill them, it was like, let them. Kill them. So that's what she did. Bryce wasn't a big fan of learning about her family's lore, though. Now, when Feyre talks about her world's human history, she tells us in chapter 2 of book 1 of ACOTAR that a millennia before, they were slaves to the High Fae overlords. They built sprawling civilizations with temples for their feral gods, and it really does feel like history repeating itself right here.
The cave system is actually just a circle because the process just keeps repeating.
Yeah, because the Midgard worm has created a circle around it, so they just keep on going around and around.
Chapter 20. In the meat market, Ethan was not ready to fight Siggy, but in the end, he did fight the frail girl. It was a battle to the death. It seemed to be a decent fight since they were both getting blows in. Therian watched and realized this was partially his fault. He had to make the drag feel bad. Therian put his big boy wetsuit on and told the Vipe that this ends now. She's like, nah. He knew Ethan wouldn't fuck up Siggy like he needed to, and so Therian was stressed as hell. Well, no. Ethan stood over her, ready to make the final blow, and the Vipe is like, do it, you little bitch boy, or something similar. Siggy's on the ground, lifts her head, and thanks Ethan for getting her out. Ethan was so mad at the Vipe, he turned to yell at her to stop this, and then Siggy struck. Cheap shot. So it really is little bitch boy versus frail bitch girl. But Siggy went for him, and in a freak accident, his claws went through her throat.
Do you know how diabolical it was, in the meat market, and then you end, that little paragraph as they were both getting blows in?
It's the red light district. The Vipe says, enough fish, and I love her. She gives no fucks. That's so offensive to Therian.
We would be friends with her. She might not like us though.
She'd bully
No.
us for sure, and I would love her more.
And this is gonna be unpopular, maybe. We all know I love the Vipe Queen, but I don't give a fuck about Ethan's storyline. Like, I can't even pretend to care.
It's just us following him around making bad choices.
And I'm just like, you're annoying, you're whiny, you make terrible decisions. And so I'm not gonna lie, every part I'm reading about Ethan is a bit of a hate read. Like, I don't care about the hair. And it's all Ethan's fault.
Yeah, Therian wouldn't be like such a mess if he like didn't have to help his friend out.
Yeah.
He could be, doing his normal fights. In the
So,
Eternal City, the Hellhound is going to town on Rune's hand. 2 bites to go. Hunt slipped into the role as Umbra Mortis and is like, do it, baby girl, eat that hand. Chewing the hand off is a success. And Rune is able to grab the iron poker just as Rage, as Blakely likes to call him, Pollux, and the Hawk popped in to see this shit show.
no, no, no.
I'm sorry for what I wrote.
What's my note? No.
In Prythian, Silene is still monologuing about how they were still waging war on the humans when the door between worlds opened again and more Fae appeared. Similar but different. Ears, grace, and strength were the samesies, but they were shapeshifters, each capable of turning into an animal. Canines were sharp and erect constantly. Everyone was surprised to learn about the other Fae from a distant world. They had elemental magic that made Peleus wary of them. They were wild and answered directly to Rigelus and seemed to be pretty tight homies with him. Thea was Thea was starting to realize that the Daglin were shifty sons of bitches. She came to trust only her daughter since Peleus was basically sucking the Daglin's dick. Because I haven't been on a tangent about Aurelia and Pangera overlapping in a while, Silene mentions this. A glimpse through a curtain of Peleus dumping a human woman's body. I don't know, I sat forward for that part. Human woman's body into a river besides a white stone villa. And I just want to say in Rifthold, the avenues were made of white stone and against a river. Just another small detail.
The question I have is how did the Fae, that are obviously like Tog Fae, get duped and be on the Asteri side? Like, since time is so weird, it's hard to know what time frame these guys actually came in from. But like, Aelin would not get duped.
Well, we know that sometimes Fae are a little power hungry and they, probably
So,
offered them power. Well, they did offer
so
them power, not probably. They sure did. They did
I
that.
bet you it's Adian's fault. It's probably all Adian.
It 100% was Adian and
He's
Ethan
like,
somehow. It was Ethan's
yeah,
fault.
he's like, I didn't get the blood oath first. I'm gonna do this. And he went and got power with the fucking Daglin.
Celine goes on about her mother trusted only her and Helena to seek the truth. She knew that they would be of great use to her because they bore the shadows and starlight. They had hid in the Asteri palace as shadows and learned the truth about Rigelus and their parasitic ways. They conquered world after world, feeding off their magic and lives of their citizens. They decided to go by their government name of the Asteri now. Thea told them that they need to defeat the Asteri. Bryce is not impressed that she's related to these fucking dorks. Celine keeps going on, and that Thea kept the star map that the Daglin had annotated. She saw a world that had overthrown the Daglin. She used the harp and the horn and opened a portal to which Prince Adis appeared, saying, "Have you come to ask for Hell's help then?"
So I have questions of Thea saying they'd be a great use because they bore shadows and starlight. Where does the shadow come in? Is that from Theon or is that from her? That is the question, obviously. But it makes me think of Reese and one of the reasons why he's so powerful. And he has like Valgy, voidy shadows. And then we also know he comes from the starlight side, obviously, as well. So we have talked if the Vag, so we've talked before about like, is the Valg like the shadow side? And the light is like the god side of Steris. I don't know.
Who's to say?
But it makes you wonder, like, I want to know more about Fion's powers.
I feel like we need more of both their history, like Thea's and Fion's. Like, who's their
Well,
daddies?
and even like with Fion, it's like they said in there that they showed the memories Fion and Thea did. Do we trust those? What if they warped them?
Like, how much can we trust Thea?
Not, not well, bitch. Like, no, we don't trust her. And Fion seems shifty too. Like, he doesn't want to share and stuff. What's just weird is like they fell in love. Like, this was the story with Fion and Thea. Like, it was a love story. And then because of power, Thea was like pissed at him. But like, he never wanted to share with Thea. Like, it's just a very weird thing.
And why is it that, once again, we're mentioning like Reese's rightful heritage?
Right.
Like, how does that tie into all of this? The starlight, the shadows, them.
Like, it's obvious that he's a descendant of Thea because he can go on the island. Like, we get all that. But I just want to know. I think I have questions about his mom. I have a lot of questions about his mom too, because obviously she's Illyrian. Illyrian are made from Daglin. But what if Reese really is like a demon test tube baby and the Princess of Hell? I don't know. Like maybe his mom came from one of the Princess of Hell. There's something weird there. I don't know what it is though. I'm gonna
We're
find
going to
out.
table it and we'll come back to it in a few months.
Chase is on the case. Chapter 21. Silene tells them that Adis has been in charge of keeping an eye on the Asteri and making sure their evil never triumphed again. So Adis and Thea swap back and forth between the portals, and they realized they needed more troops. Thea was out of options and needed her enemies on her side. She headed to Parthos. Now, Parthos was a real looker, more beautiful than any city on Midgard. The meeting Thea had did not go well, but she stood her ground and told them that she told them all she'd learned about the Asteri, but the humans told her what they'd learned, that the Asteri had infected their water with a parasite that burrowed into their bodies and warped their magic. Plus, the details about the drought and how it was just an updated version of the tide. The humans learned about all of this and were gleeful of their oppressors being owned by the Asteri. They ended up having 10,000 warriors, but even with Hell's army, it was not enough.
Let's revisit overlapping worlds and salt. It said Adis used rare summoning salts that facilitated communication between worlds. His spies in Midgard had kept him well informed since the Asteri had failed to conquer his planet. Salt seems to be in abundance in Midgard, doesn't it? Probably because Midgard is the same planet as Aurelia, Wendelin, and the Southern Continent. We never learned the name of that world throughout all of the Throne of Glass series. But because of geographical factors, Blakely and I think that Pangea is Aurelia and Valbara is the Southern Continent, as we've talked about on multiple episodes. Now we get to bring up the point of salt. Selena, aka Aelin, was a slave at the salt mines in Endovir. There were thousands of slaves mining salt. For what? Salt just happens to be used for summoning, spells, mystics, and more in Midgard. And in Throne of Glass, there is never a mention of what that salt was used for. But the king of Aderlin, who was being controlled by Valg, had everyone mining for salt. It's like he knew the salt's capabilities thanks to being an otherworldly parasite. Reminder that black salts are illegal in Valbara. Shout out to that shifty satyr who sells them. The Asteri made sure to regulate something that could summon something that could destroy them.
Yeah, and I remember in Throne of Glass when we're first introduced and they're still in Endovir, Parrington has a meeting with the accountant. And I always now looking back on it, it's like I think Parrington was definitely like, we're moving all these, trying to get all that salt.
I
Get
think it
that
was
salt.
very intentional so nobody could discover what else
Mhm.
it could be used for to defeat them.
Mhm.
And in talking of these overlapping worlds, let's talk more about Parthos being the Parvani library. When Bryce is able to see Parthos in the vision, it says, the white stone city rose like a dream from a vast black soiled river delta. Parthos was more beautiful than any city currently on Midgard, adorned with elegant spires and columns, massive obelisks in the market squares, sparkling fountains, and complex network of aqueducts, and humans milling about in relative peace and ease, not fear. It's very much giving southern continent vibes. When Nezrin first arrived in Antica, the part that had glimpsed the spires and minarets and domes of the god city breaking over the horizon as they sailed in, the shining pillar of the Tor standing over it all, and had to swallow back tears. People had sat upon the archways and steps, with thousands cramming the streets that flowed to the white stoned building. And then also when Nezrin, Kaol, and the team were leaving the southern continent, this was mentioned. Water ran through aqueducts, wending between the buildings, feeding the houses and public fountains and countless gardens and parks scattered throughout. A conqueror might have taken this city 3 centuries ago, but that same conqueror had left it as well, treated it well and nourished it. The Library of Parthos, it hadn't been a place to hold books, Bryce knew. The compound had housed several academies for various fields of studies, the arts, science, mathematics, philosophy, as well as a vast collection of books, a treasure trove of thousands of years' worth of learning. Parvani Library was the library of knowledge, being a sister to the Torquesme in the sense of libraries. One is healing, one is knowledge. Why wouldn't it have the same aesthetic if on the same continent under ruling of the same leader? One that loved it, as said the Kagan did.
No. This is one of the few things that I get a little unsure of when talking about Parthos. Bryce mentions the marshes to the north, which we know they're marshes north of the Lunatian. That's where the Sobex were. And that's why I'm a little is Parthos the Torquesme, but the Torquesme has evolved over time, and there also could be multiple marshes. When I initially came up with this theory, I said, I think in our first episode, that I thought that the southern continent and Valbar are the same, and I said that Torquesme is probably Parthos. But I just want to say that I'm not married to either one, because I think that it makes sense that it would be actually Parvani in the sense of what Parvani was. I'm totally on board with, yes, they would look the same too. It's just the locations that make me a little unclear, but I think that Sarah is so vague on purpose, but I don't actually think it matters if it's Parvani or Parthos. It's the same fucking thing. It's the same continent. But I think Parvani makes more sense. I just think that she was intentional on trying to not let us know with the Parthos clues. Because who's to say there isn't marshes right above Parvani? It's just the yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I said Parthos, yeah. No, Parvani. Because
So many
Parvani,
P's.
I know, it's wait, no, yeah. There could be marshes above Parvani too, so that could be Parthos. And that she's so unclear in Crescent City of where Parthos really is. We know it's a mess. She's so freaking.
We just don't know their climate change situation. We don't know,
Yeah.
Are they regulating first light? Is it affecting their atmosphere?
Well, it's also named after supercontinents. Pangea after Pangea, Valbara was a supercontinent. So if we're going off of all this time has passed, who's to say that things didn't change?
Yeah. And probably completely wrong.
I don't
care.
think so, though. I don't think so. I don't think you're wrong either. It's just it's one or the other.
Or
But
it's
the only
neither.
reason
It could be the Great Library of Orinth.
that would be a different continent.
They didn't. Maybe they traveled through one of these cave systems, moves a library.
There's a portal.
This is how they built the pyramids, Cave systems.
We can't get started on the pyramids. We'll get derailed here. Silene didn't really know the details of Thea and Ada's love story, other than they were mates, and Thea planned to go to hell after the war, not to rule, but to live. She did not get that chance. In the middle of the night, word came from the Asteri that they could surrender and they would be spared, or they could fight and die. They were high in the mountains. That's Kylie's dream. That's Kylie's dream. High in the mountains. They were high in the mountains where they thought winter snow could protect them. Adis went back to hell to get more soldiers. So it was just them and their mom. Thea had a plan, but they ran out of time. So she told the girls to play the harp and horn.
Do a little concert on the mountains.
No, like everything I'm picturing in my head is wrong. They needed to get the fuck out of this world because Peleus was coming, and he would want to be a coming to legitimize himself. So Thea played a low string on the harp. A star came out of her chest, and it was split into 3 and went amongst them. She had learned that from watching her former masters that she could move power from one soul to another, and she did what she could to protect them. She left on her Pegasus with Gwydion in hand. They tried running for the archway and even had Fae from their court racing towards them because they figured out what the girls were up to. Helena lifted the horn to her lips as Silene plucked the string on the harp. A shining light rippled in the archway with the stone room appearing, but the Asteri wolves found them. She lifted the harp again, but her sister didn't sound the horn. Helena used that harp to send her the way she needed to go, and then ran down the mountain to buy Silene time. Silene watched her mom get stabbed in the dome by Peleus. But rather than avenge her or fight with her sister, she plucked the harp and fell through the worlds. As Silene was crying on the stone floor, she heard her people banging on the stone to let them in. So I'm banging on the counter.
It wasn't me.
She's just like not answering. Wasn't me.
Definitely Silene was like, wasn't me.
It wasn't me. But she didn't. And after a while, it sounded like they were sucked into the stone of the palace.
This entire time, telling the girls to play the harp and the horn, I'm like, don't invite Tamlin. That is a terrible band. A fiddle, a harp, and a horn.
No, thank you.
I'm going to sit this one out. That's the band.
But I feel like Tamlin would be down to get high on top of a mountain with the gals.
Yeah, for sure. You have to be to play the fiddle.
In order to play those instruments, you have to be high.
For that combo?
Yeah, that'd be brutal.
It said a lone woman stood from the crowd. Bryce reminded herself to keep breathing, to steady herself. Do you think it was Jessica? Like that's just that one vision with her weird breathing? Because why not?
I'm down for that.
There's never going to be a confirmation of that, but in my mind, it was Jessica.
It's like the last chapter. I was like, who did you think those 2 were? I didn't. Didn't think about it, actually. But when Selene's falling through the worlds, it says again she's falling down, and then she gets yanked across, and that's exactly what happened with Bryce. And I just feel like
you just keep doing father, son, holy.
Silene made the decision to keep it all a secret, to keep this world safe. She put the harp down and used all her concentration to use the light to slice through the stone and carve planets, stars, and gods. Then was on her hands and knees, that's what she said, and you could see her power at her fingertips. The vision fast forwards to her older, and Silene explained she tried to atone for her mother's mistakes, and she created the tunnels and carvings to tell the story for the future. She dammed the entire place and set traps for the Asteri's monsters, and the palace became a prison. So this line, beneath another mountain far to the south, I found a being of blood and rage and nightmares. Once a pet of the Asteri, it had long been in hiding, feeding off the unwitting. With the dagger and her power, she laid a trap for it. And when it came sniffing, she dragged it back here, locked it in one of the cells, and warded the door. How does Lucian describe Amren? Amren is a bedtime story. They told us as younglings to behave. Amren was who would drink your blood and carry me to hell if I acted out of line. It just reminds me of Amren. And the way that Amren was like acting a little suspicious when Thea and they all got brought up in the beginning of this book. Who's to say?
Chapter 22. In walked that little bitch Regulus, The hawk picked up Rune's hand like it was a toy. Rigel asks if they're ready to chat about where Bryce is and tells Hunt it brings no joy to see him with a halo or a slave brand. Hunt calls him out for its true title that he learned from the shadows, the Black Crown. Rigel then asks for a little lightning, and no, Rigel is not referring to Hunt's wiener. He wants a little lightning in a crystal for his side project. Hunt objects, then Rigel is like, Choosy gets 86 from life, my guy. So Hunt gives up some lightning, and it's hella painful, and lets him know that it's now Executioner's choice who gets 86 from life. That bitch Rigelus, not to be confused with that bitch, parts with an ominous, we shall see what Athalar is willing to give up when it really comes down to it, where even the Umbra Mortis draws the line. A dramatic reading by me.
Starring me.
Rigel said, your lightning is a gift, Athalar. Why was Athy chosen for this gift, and why did I write Athy? Two very important questions.
Unclear. I don't know.
Like, it was like the gods gave Athalar, Hunt, a little kiss of power.
I mean, they did, because he's a little demon test tube baby, but yeah, why? Wonder why. I have questions that won't get answers.
No. Because we don't even have an epilogue in this Crescent City, in this book.
In this Crescent City.
We built this city on rock and roll. It's time to go for Lydia. She arrives in the dungeons and sees Rune's hand being held up by the hawk. I made sure to mention this as many times as possible for you. She gives Hunt and Baxi Boy a shot that was created to target their wings and help them grow. Lydia tells Pollux and the hawk it's basically so they can cut them off again. Pollux asks to watch, and Lydia says nay and to get out. They leave Lydia alone with the prisoners, and she tells him to get up and tries to mind speak to Rune, telling him the heartbeat is being resurrected, but he still has an away message up for her. Back in the prison of Prythian, Bryce is not impressed by her ancestors. It was too similar to what happened when the demons ran rampant around Valbara. Nesta asked what Bryce was expecting. Bryce told her a way to kill the Asteri, but it was glossed over and she was just an heir to assholes. Azrael asks what happened to the horn, and Nesta is like, you silly goose, she is the horn, and that's why she's the only one who can move between worlds, and then calls her a liability. Azrael went for the shadows to grab her, but she used her starlight against him. Bryce also happened to be on top of the 8-pointed star. Smart gal knew Silene left her magic as inheritance. That like called to like, and Bryce called upon her inheritance, which was raw Fae power in star form, and she guided that bad boy into her body. Bryce was now hella powerful and could call on the land. She was able to pull a wall of stone up and stop Azrael. Nesta and Araxia drawn with her silver flame while the mountain was shaking. I'm just thinking of motorboat.
Well, I don't think that. I actually think of Romeo and Michelle. Is that an earthquake? No, it's Ramon.
Oh my God. Definitely different routes, but I'm still thinking about Cathona's tits, you know? That's insane, too.
Cathona's tits.
Azrael reminded them of the prisoners within the mountain, but then the island spoke to her that it was still alive and she could awaken it. Bryce then told them that she wasn't their enemy and to come take the horn if they wanted it. Then she stomped her last season Prada shoes and a void opened up beneath them.
Chapter 23. Lydia knew she was on borrowed time, considering the prisoners had resorted to chewing off Rune's hand. So she headed down to the Mystic's lair and told the Sprite Queen she needs her to torture her because Hunt Athalar made some friends with the sprite named Lahaba, who was a descendant of Queen Ranthia Droll. She needed her help to help free Hunt and 2 of his friends, so they needed to create a diversion. Lydia tapped the crystal ball, dissolving it, because she still had access to the power Rigels had granted in her blood to open the ball. Lydia was also wheeling and dealing with the hag. She owes Lydia a favor for her freedom, so she needs to get the slave tat off the sprite. Hildy had some questions like, hey, you sure your master's okay with this? She's like, yep, So she frees Hildy of the Gorgon shackles, and before she could do something stupid, Ludia?
I love Ludia.
Lydia already had a gun to her head and was like, bitch, I don't fucking think so. She pinky promised to not kill her as long as she takes the tattoo off. She did, and then Erithus killed the hag. Lydia laid out her plan, and she had no choice but to trust the sprite. So back in Prythian, they were in a chamber, and Bryce was spiraling about the light and the power she now possessed. But now wasn't the time. There was a clear quartz sarcophagus in the center of the space with a dark-haired female inside. Like Thea's warnings to her daughters, evil lurked below, and here evil was. I'm just highlighting this. I don't have like full, complete thoughts. You might, but it just needs to be said. We should chat about Bryce's thoughts about her new power. She siphoned Selene's power from this place. It thrummed to her body, familiar yet foreign. It felt permanent, not temporary like when she gets a charge. It felt like this power bound to her former power. Like calls to like, sister powers. Bryce knew she bore Thea's light through Helena's line, but this new light was Selene's. It wasn't the same power, and she couldn't figure it out. Do you have any gut thoughts on this?
So obviously Reese has Selene's power.
Yeah.
And so but I wonder if it's more shadow oriented.
Mm-hmm. Like they both have shadows, Selene, but I think,
Like
maybe.
it's the darker star power, which we'll get to that in the next episode when we talk about the Ori. So have thoughts, but we have to read more in order to get to them.
We will probably bring this whole paragraph back up in a chapter or two.
Chapter 24. They were in a room with no door, and the only entrance seems to be the ceiling that they fell through. In the middle was a crystal coffin with a female who was sleeping. Azrael clutched his pearls and asked, "What have you done?" He had the star sword and truth teller ready spaghetti to fight. That's when the crazy gal in the coffin woke up with some blue-ass eyes that glowed. Immediately, she looked to Bryce and said, "Release me, slave," then asked how long her siesta was. Bryce, Nesta, and Azrael ignore Coffin Gal until Bryce tells her to get fucked. Nesta asked her what she is, and she said they're God, and asks, "How do you not know?" She then turns to Azrael, calls him a foot soldier, and asks him to let her out and to make the tithe. She was pissed. She asked if Thea stole the horn for Bryce, and to Nesta that she is linked to the trove. Coffin Gal then says, "Do you not think a blacksmith knows their own creation?" And there's a lot to unpack.
Yes.
I would like to point out, based on order of book releases from ACOTAR to Crescent City, we started with bootleg Booty and the Beast. Bootleg Beauty and the Beast, and now we have bootleg copy of like Sleeping Beauty. But nobody kissed her to wake her up.
Yeah, it's Sleeping Beauty with like some Snow White-ish themes.
I wrote Snow White in one spot and Sleeping Beauty in another. I was like, well, it's both. Big Disney gal, you know? So it said Bryce had never seen skin that pale. It glowed like a full moon. Her dark hair, it was too dark somehow. It didn't reflect the light at all. It shouldn't have existed in nature. And her hair is just giving Wordstone and really convincing me that the Valg are one with the Asteri and the Daglin. And like I mentioned in chapter 72 of House and Sky and Breath about Selena touching the Wordstone below the clock tower, she touched the stone and a shot went through her, her head pounding so badly she gagged. The eye of Elena gave a pulse of blue light but quickly died as if the light itself had been sucked toward the stone and devoured. In Throne of Glass, there was the unnatural dark storm that the night Aelin lost her parents, an unnatural darkness gathered on the horizon when they were going to war with the Valg. The Valg created a black that is not natural, and it just sounds so much like the Asteri's hair. Convincing you, if you weren't convinced that these are all one, it just makes me curious again about Mantix and Orcus every damn time. I know that they have nothing to do with any of this, but I just... Maybe they will.
We don't know that. And also back to the tapestry that the weaver in the shop in A Court of Frost and Starlight, Feyre says, she stared and stared at the black fabric, almost like I was staring at the pit of hell, and stared at the iridescent living silver thread that cut through it, bright despite the darkness that devoured all other light and color. Her hair feels very voidy. And I want to put this rumor to bed. I know I have blue eyes. I wear red lipstick a lot and I have dark hair, black hair. I just want to make sure you guys know that I am not her.
Well,
I saw a lot of online.
it's funny that you bring that up because Celine, not Celine, the Asteri was wearing lipstick and no one had lips that were vibrantly red. Blowjob red, Danica had once quipped about similar shade Bryce had worn. And that's Maeve's signature color. Or is that just a color favored by all space parasites? Like, let us know, Blake.
Well, we're actually all sponsored by Revlon, and that is why. It really stays on. It's hard to get off. Actually, this is Maybelline. I lied. But we should talk about this, about Maeve. In Tog, Brandon had hit the word keys in case Maeve ever decided to install herself as the mistress of these lands. And the way this broad is talking, her black hair, white skin, red lips, it's feeling a little Maeve-y.
Maybe they're cousins. Maybe reincarnated. Who knows? Maybe it is Maeve on a different world.
And the blue eyes are getting me. Just with the people we know with similar eye color, Reese, Dory, and Rune. They all have shadow powers. The black hair is something they all share. If Reese was a descendant, it would make sense. Did she create Thea? Who's Thea's parents? Was this her mistress? She created her?
You know, maybe it's a Valg princess. Maybe she's a princess.
Well, I mean, like, the Daglin created the Asteri. What if this Asteri created Thea for the Starborn line, and that's really what it is?
Are they creating or just rebranding?
They love a rebrand moment.
That's why I don't think Valg are cousins. I think they're all one and the same species.
Yeah. Well, we know for sure that Daglin and Asteri are the same. So it doesn't make sense to me that really, obviously there's different species of the void and different type of spawns, but Valg, Princes of Hell, they're all the same.
Parasitic. Well, we don't know about the Prince of Hell being parasitic space creatures. I wanted to say celestial conquistadors again, but I didn't. But then I did.
Well, Thanatos likes to drink them like fine wine, so they feed off power too. Sounds kind of parasitic.
Not gonna say who's to say,
Mm-hmm.
but who is?
But who is to actually say this? Us. It is us.
So Bryce thought about Azrael, that he must have some sort of starborn blood in him, a distant ancestor maybe, or maybe his possession of the knife somehow allowed him to also bear the star sword. Do you think starborn blood is in Azrael, or is it maybe the tie to the Asteri?
I think it depends on what you think Starborn really is. What Starborn really comes from. Born from a star. Asteri mean star. So was the first Starborn an Asteri creation, like I just said? Or like I've mentioned multiple times about Starborn could be just a symbol of the gods. Asteri often refer to themselves as gods. So maybe they are, or maybe they're just void spawn and an offshoot of the feral gods we know of in Throne of Glass. But it kind of feels like they're all the same.
I have some thoughts, but it has to do with the cauldron, so let's keep going.
Mhm.
In Valbara, the gang is shook at what Ethan did, but they were free. Deck, Flynn, Ethan, and Therian hop in a car. They get ready to go when the sprites bang at the window. The boys forgot them. The sprites yell, "Go, go, go," because those bad bitches burnt the meat market, really living that YOLO life now. But back in Prythian, the Asteri is pissed that Azrael had the audacity to raise a weapon to her. Bryce realized this Asteri was the one from Thea's story. The Asteri asked if Fionn sent Az after seeing his blade, then asked if he was Analius. Nesta and Fionn sent them. Bryce said Thea sent her and has been dead for 15,000 years. This gave the Asteri a small shock. Thea was the one that got her in the coffin, turns out. Bryce asked for the Star Sword, but Azrael said no, and that this was her fault. Bryce actually wanted to ask the Asteri questions, and with that, Bryce opened the coffin.
The Asteri says, "You draw a weapon before me against those who crafted you, soldier, from night and pain. As said, you're no creator of mine. we know that's not necessarily true. Az is part of Lyrian, which the Daglin created to be their warriors. So technically, he is a creation of her. But Az is also something other in all of our opinions, I think. We just don't know what it is yet. I said above that it's possible he's Starborn, especially if we look at it as like of who the creator of Starborn actually is. I was playing devil's advocate above, but I truly think that Starborn comes from chaos. She's the silver thread, the hope, the creator in the void. She's the true mother of Starborn, and that's why she has a vested interest in the Starborn and seems to nudge them along more than others. I think Starborn is the key to defeating the evil of the void. And what makes someone like Reese and possibly Bryce so dangerous is because they potentially, for sure, Reese, have the powers of both. Like we've talked about many times, we believe the princes of hell are in fact Valg. Valg means choice, which means I don't believe that they're just straight across the board inherently evil. There is a choice in the matter, and why Reese always makes such a point to make sure that the inner circle and even Bryce, who was his prisoner, have a choice in things because he knows with that power he could easily turn evil, but instead he just sometimes does a little bit of evil things for the greater good.
Choice is so big for him because he chooses to be good.
Mm-hmm. The choice every day, and I understand it. It's a choice every day for me to be kind of good.
It takes a lot of work to point that moral compass north.
Mm-hmm.
In mentioning the Asteri, it says, the taint of the Asteri who had ruled here, Silene had claimed had lingered about this place, a terrible ancient power, enough so that it needed to be concealed by the prison's wickedness. Terrible and ancient has been mentioned together in Throne of Glass when talking about Dorian's daddy's name. Dorian's rage slipped, and the agony of having his magic, his soul, shredded from him became secondary. As his father said, Erewhon took it, wiped it from history, from memory, an ancient, terrible spell, so powerful it could only be used once. Also, I might be his most faithful servant. Weird, ancient and powerful, being used together in describing the Valg and Asteri. But there's another mention in ACOTAR. When Nesta was being yoinked through the water by the Kelpie and called out to the magic in her, after the cauldron was remade, she said, please, she begged the power within her slumbering and ancient and terrible. Please, Nesta casts for it, seeking it in the chasm inside herself. And we know she then found the mask. We know Nesta's magic comes from the cauldron. And in chapter 16, we learn all life comes from it. Azrael said with something like reverence, the mother poured it into this world and from it life blossomed. But in chapter 19, Silene shares the cauldron was of our world, our heritage. But upon arriving here, the Daglin captured it and used their powers to warp it, to turn it from what had been into something deadlier, no longer just a tool of creation, but of destruction. And the horrors it produced, those too, my parents would turn to their advantage. So the Daglin fucked with the cauldron, which gave Nesta and Elaine their powers. Hold half this thought in your back pocket. We have a sidebar that we'll come back to. But the cauldron gave Nesta her powers, which the cauldron was tainted by the Daglin. The Daglin created the Dread Trove. They were their instruments of conquest, as we learned in chapter 19. In connecting all these to being specifically to the words used by Silene, terrible and ancient, I'm just saying this is confirming even further that Valg, Asteri, Daglin are one. SJM has never confirmed this, so we can only assume at this point that the Valg are included in that inner circle based on this evidence. I'm also so curious about Nessa's connection to the cauldron and why she can use the Asteri-made mask. And on that note, why can Bryce? Reminder to this combo that happened in chapter 13. Nesta then compares Bryce to an Asteri with the star inside her versus inside them. Bryce explains hers is just light, but the Asteri claim their powers are from holy stars inside themselves, but they can physically manipulate, kill, and destroy with that light, and calls out how they are liars. So how can you trust what they say? Bryce does have more power than Starlight, though. She learns that she can winnow. What else has she not figured out yet? Especially when we get to her fucking with the orrery coming up. But to go back to what we were talking about, I wonder if they are truly holy stars that the Valg took over in which the same way that they did to the cauldron. You know, because they've had wordstone necklaces, they have the crown, like the dark crown. So I do wonder if maybe they are truly holy stars and that we're gods that were infected by Valg. Rogue theory, not married to it, but what if? I told you I was going to come back to that thought, and I'm really proud of myself for doing that.
We did.
Which, going to the sidebar about the Daglin fucking with the cauldron, which gave Nesta and Elaine their powers. We know Nesta is death. But if from the cauldron life blossomed, what if Elaine is going to have some sort of earth magic to create life? You know, she likes flowers and all that plant is a like foreshadowing. And Elaine's powers specifically, do they come from like the word Erd mother side of the cauldron, and Nesta's powers are from the Daglin side?
I could definitely see that, especially since Elaine's powers feel more hopeful, like in nature, which is like the silver thread that I talked about earlier. And I don't believe Elaine tried taking anything from the cauldron like Nesta did. We don't know much about her experience, but it just doesn't seem like it. So Elaine's powers were more a gift from the mother, a gift because she, in fact, knows that they might need this gift to fight the evil.
When Nesta was giving up her powers to save Nyx, and the mother let her keep a little, like I talked about in the last episode, that was word Erd mother doing her a solid, I'm assuming. Because this was all after the cauldron was remade. So were the Daglin dicks removed when it was broken?
Possibly, but evil always lurks. So some probably still remained a shadow of death. And the fucks tampered with it because they wanted to be able to use it for power and for their benefit.
I just am so curious about the power that it held and if Nesta truly did. Because if Nesta did get the Daglin side, which is a being hailed from the void, but then it also could be the mother.
Yeah, I think and I probably just go this way just because of the darkness and the light. I think, yeah, Daglin is more on the void side, just like with shadows and stuff. That's where I go. But I don't know if that's just in my brain or why my brain thinks that.
And the fact that Nesta can use the trove, which was created by the Daglin Asteri, the Dasteri, the Aslan.
The dysentery that they got on the Oregon Trail. That is what happened.
But it's curious that she can use it and that Bryce can use it, and they are things that the Asteri made. Questions for another time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then you can think about because Pharaoh was even talked about as like a conduit, and she can control like the cauldron because she was made.
By
So then it
every High Lord, which makes their power
exactly.
suspicious. Because then the
Exactly.
tithe comes into play as well, because, you know, like they were giving up power and like, you know, I think we actually do need ACOTAR in order to get some answers to these questions because they have, yeah.
Thanks for giggling through our journey with us today. We have new episodes every Tuesday, sometimes Wednesdays if my kids are sick. And join us next week as we get into chapters 25 through 32.
Make sure you follow us on social media for all of our latest updates, theories, and more new book goofing. Don't forget to hit subscribe and give us a review wherever you listen. All links are in our info. We will see you next week, you giggling gal pals.